great to be here today. I've been to a lot of these Freedom Flower reunions, and great to see the audience and more people here today. And I want to introduce Sergeant Class Dan Stamaris. Now, he was captured 35 years ago. That's a long time. That's when Gulf War started in 1991. He was on a helicopter that was going in to enemy territory to rescue an F-16 pilot, and they got shot down. And he was a POW 8 days, and he was badly injured, and he recovered well and fulfilled a career in the Army. And I want to hear, let's go give him a hand coming up here and hear him speak.
Good morning. You ready for somebody to wing it? That's pretty much what I'm going to do up here. I'm just going to share a little bit. Originally, I was supposed to talk about communication and survival. Well, that kind of intermixed with this. I want to tell a little bit of my story about what happened. And some of you that are here may have heard it yesterday. I did a real short 5-minute one, and I feel like I got some really important things in that little short speech. But I'm just going to share a little bit of what happened. Of course, it was during Desert Storm. I was not just a gunner, I was the crew chief, mechanic, and the gunner on the aircraft. The aircraft I was senior crew chief on it. It was my aircraft, it's my responsibility. That's my aircraft and myself right there. And the 4 gentlemen you see here are my 2 pilots, and then the third one is myself, and then my assistant crew chief gunner, Sergeant Butts. Mr. Godfrey's the first one, Mr. Garvey's the second one. Mr. Godfrey was a IP. Mr. Garvey was an IP, Mr. Godfrey was a SIP, Senior Instructor Pilot. So we had a very experienced crew. Of all our crew, 3 Black Ops crews in the unit, we had the most experienced crew. But that obviously didn't matter. When we were shot down, we were flying about between 130 to 150 knots. Doesn't sound very fast to most of the people in here, but for a helicopter, it's moving around pretty good. We were only about 30 feet above the ground when we got hit by a 57 millimeter, and I'll show you a picture of that. If we can get this clicker working. The first picture on the top shows the aircraft wreckage in a berm. We actually crashed on top of an Iraqi vehicle. And the second picture shows you why we went in. Aircraft basically it was unflyable when that was knocked off. But when we got hit, my co-pilot told my pilot, he said, watch your rotors and keep it out of the dirt. And he managed to get off Mayday twice. And then we impacted. That's what was going on in the front of the aircraft. I'm in the back, in the crew chief gunner seat, and I hear another voice say to me, stow your weapon. I didn't know who it was. It wasn't the pilots, it wasn't my assistant crew chief gunner. There was nobody else on the aircraft. I mean, we had 8 people on board. 4 of us were hooked up to the ICS. 3 were just passengers in the back, which consisted of a flight surgeon and 2 pathfinders, infantry soldiers that were going to provide area security. Because this was a search and rescue mission looking for a downed F-16 pilot. But anyway, I stowed my weapon, and I probably did something that usually takes close to 10 seconds to do. I probably did in 2 seconds. Stowed it, locked my inertia reels, said a very short 3 or 4 word prayer, and then basically went. So we hit, it broke every bone in my left leg, shattered my femur, broke my pelvis, separated. I was in bad shape. but I was never unconscious. I got out of the aircraft, and I'm leaving out a lot of details here, but suffice it to say that once I got out of the aircraft and the Iraqis got to us, they ended up leaving me at the crash site to die. What I didn't know at the time is that they took 2 other personnel prisoners that had survived. So out of 8 on board, we only had 3 that survived. I lost my whole flight crew and 2 of the packs in the back. But anyway, eventually they came back, got me, didn't take any type of medical precautions with me. They were picking me up, bending me, I'm screaming in pain, thinking it's going to kill me, paralyze me. Of course, I lived through it and felt it all. So I ended up with an interrogation team, and of course, they interrogated me, spat on me, roughed me up some. Of course, they want more information than what you want to give or what you're required to give. They hated pilots, and of course, I wasn't a pilot, but guess what? What was I wearing? Flight suit. Automatic pilot. And I had to tell them that, no, I'm not a pilot, I'm just a mechanic, and my job is to maintain the aircraft and to unload and unload personnel and equipment. All of that's true. I did leave one thing out. I didn't tell them I was a door gunner. Okay? Not smart. Anyway, when they got done with me, and then they took me and played show and tell with me, violation of Geneva Convention, and I drove around quite a bit, and then when they were completely done with me, they took me off the vehicle, laid me about probably 20, 30 yards from some dirt tracks out in the desert and left me to die. So I didn't have much equipment with me to survive. I did have my flight suit on, my boots on, all my survival gear was gone because they took my flight vest, and that's where we had all our survival equipment. But I had one other piece of equipment that ended up being key for me. I had a wet weather jacket on. Why is he wearing a wet weather jacket in the desert? Well, I've been flying since 0500 that morning. This is like around after 5 sometime, I'm probably closer to 6 by the time they dumped me off. And I had that on because taking off and landing a helicopter, you're in the desert, you're throwing up all kinds of sand and dust, and it's to help keep stuff from getting in my uniform. Okay? So that's why I had it on. But I think it partially was one of the main things as far as my survival equipment that you would never think of as being survival equipment. Because I managed to get it on my body backwards and created basically a cavity for my core. And I had the hood on it. I could put up over my head and exhale breath because I could put it on backwards on purpose. And that's how I kept my body core temperature up all night because it did drop down to at least in the 40s. So anyway, that tells you what happened, a little bit of the survival stuff. So I got that in there, okay. Communication, I'm going to throw that in there before I get any further. Unfortunately, there was a lot of disconnects between services on communication and also within services. We were vectored in by a CSAR aircraft. The CSAR was telling us where to go. For some reason, CSAR wasn't talking to the AWACS, and the AWACS wouldn't talk to the CSAR, and we launched to go on a mission to rescue a pilot that was already shot down, was already captured, and the Air Force, Marines, and Navy had told all the pilots not to fly in that area. And I'm going to say a bad word here, but this is the best way I can say it. So we have 3 helicopters going, 2 Apache gunships, and our Black Hawk. We had 3 slow-ass helicopters go into a location where some fast jets were told not to fly. And we ended up being shot down. No surprise there. I'm not going to get into a bunch of details and stuff on everything, but there was several times where my life was threatened, several times that I should have died throughout the process, but I'm still here. I actually heard that same, remember I just relayed to you that I heard a voice tell me to stow my weapon. There was one other instance where a Iraqi major told me that he had some family members killed in the war by our bombing, specifically some sons. And of course he didn't like me very much again because I had the flight suit on, I'm a pilot. So that meant I bombed his kids. And he looks at me and he says, "I'd kill you." You know what I did when he said that? I started arguing with him. I said, "You can't do that, the Geneva Convention." And I just started laughing, right? Right about that time, I hear the exact same voice say to me, "Shut up." The second time I heard it, this is my belief, I said, I immediately recognized, and my belief is that was God. And so when I heard that voice the second time, I said, "Yes, Lord, whatever your will be, so be it." Within 2 minutes, the situation was de-escalated. We departed that location. So that was good. Some other stuff that happened. Lots of stuff happened. I was told at one point in time, at this time I was in Basra, and they put me in took me out of a vehicle. I had these two guys that were in charge of me at this point, and they were wearing like partial uniforms, uniform top, no headgear, civilian trousers on. One guy was 50 wearing leather shoes and half the laces were gone or busted. The other guy's wearing knockoff Converse tennis shoes. It's like, who are these characters? Well, who they were members of the local, what they call the Ba'ath Party, which was the ruling party in Iraq. Well, they took me out of their vehicle one time. They had me in the back seat. Now, I was on a stretcher at this time, so that was a positive. Of course, he couldn't shut the door, so the door kept hitting me in the legs. But anyway, they take me in this courtyard, out of the car, into the courtyard, laid me down, walked off. So I'm laying in the middle of the courtyard, nobody's around. And there's an open breezeway that crisscrosses the courtyard. Well, when they put me down there, they put me in the shade. I've been freezing all night long. I don't want to be in the shade. I want to be in the freaking sun. That's where I want to be. I want to warm up a little bit, right? So I'm kind of agitated. And after a while, this other Iraqi, only time I ever saw him, he walks up to me, looks down at my leg, and he says to me in English, says, "We cut off your leg." Walks off. So guess what I'm doing? Mental backflips, psychological torture here. Yeah, how are they going to amputate my leg? Do they have anesthesia? Yes. Are they going to utilize it on me? Nah, I'm the bad guy. So I'm thinking all this stuff, scalpel, bone saw, knife. Then I really get wild. I say, well, I'm in the Middle East. They got these swords called scimitars, Yeah, they're just going to chop my leg off, and all I can think of is they better be a good aim. So this is my thought process. But anyway, to keep this short, I'm going to skip around a little bit. But there was an instance at some point in time when I was held in Basra where I was given a couple things to help me out. I mean, this one guy said he was some type of doctor or radiologist who gave me a little white pill for pain, I guess. And he had another thing in his hand. He actually had a handful of tomatoes. I hate tomatoes. What do you think I did with them? Yes, I did. Don't kick them out of my salad, off my sandwiches, and I found out, being down south for so many years, fried green tomatoes are the bomb. Well, anyway, that's my tomato story. I'm going to fast forward through some stuff here, and I'm going to go to when we departed Basra. Because remember I told you, there's just time and time again when I should be dead. Where I was threatened with death, I was put in situations that just were not good situations. And when they loaded us up on a bus, and now there's 3 of us. So I found out that the flight surgeon, Ronnie Corner, she was alive. That was on my aircraft. Sergeant Dunlap, who was one of the Pathfinders, he was alive. Of course, they told me they didn't think anybody else had made it, and that hit me pretty hard. Because I had there was 4 of us that worked together for the last 6 months flying and stuff, and 3 are gone, and I'm the only one left. And you got that brotherhood, and it just really, it hurts. But there's 3 of us now. They went and put us on a bus, told us they were going to take us to Baghdad. Of course, they blindfolded all of us and put us on the bus. But I had a little bit of an advantage because I was on a stretcher. If they weren't careful and didn't pull down that blindfold well enough, I could see where I was going. And guess what? 75 to 80% of the time, I can see. So we're on the bus. We drive around for a while. We drive out in the middle of the desert. I mean, there's nothing, and I can see out in front of the bus. All I see is one set of dirt tracks going straight ahead, and there's several tracks where vehicles have turned around. The guard gets off the bus. He goes and talks to another individual. Their discussion turns into an argument. Hands are flying, they're yelling at each other. Eventually, it de-escalates. The guard gets back on the bus. We turn around, head back in the direction we just came from. My gut feeling to this very day was they were deciding what our fate was going to be right then and there. That's just my gut feeling. Because why did we go there? For 2 guys to have an argument and then turn around. Gut feeling. Another case of escaping death. Eventually, we did head towards Baghdad. It took us all night to get there to the next morning. So, at which time they told us, 3 of us, they took into a room. Well, what I didn't tell you was there was a 4th individual on the bus that was a prisoner. It turned out to be Captain Bill Andrews. Captain Bill Andrews was the very F-16 pilot that we were going in to try to rescue. Didn't know that till later, but he was with us. So he had broken his lower leg. Doc Cornum, she did the exact opposite that I did when we crashed. She braced for the crash, broke both her arms. And so they got the 3 of us and they take us into this room. And Bill's across from me, Rhonda's over here. Troy, they took him to a different location. But Captain Andrews over there, and I guess he saw me and knew I was in really bad shape. And of course, I had blood all over me and everything. So he still had like a bandage, God's bandage in one of his flight pockets on his flight suit. And he offered that up to the Iraqis to utilize on me. Well, they took it from him, and I guess it kind of pissed him off because he had it. I guess they thought they got everything from him, and they proceeded just beat the heck out of him. And Ron and I are yelling at him to stop, stop. And they finally stopped, take him out, take Ron and I to a different location where I spent most of the rest of the time I was a prisoner. Yeah, and this is after they told us that the war was over, which actually wasn't truth, but it didn't stop the mistreatment. And that's just one instance of being mistreated. There were several more before that. But anyway, I'm going to fast forward to some here because I don't have much time. Eventually, the Iraqis did surgery on my leg just to stabilize it, put an external fixator on it. Of course, there's a little bit of story. I got to share that just because it's always a good one. By the time they put me back in my cell, I mean, they're very nauseated from the general anesthesia. So I figured a glass of milk would coat my stomach because pretty much all I had to eat for the last 3 or 4 days were those tomatoes, right? And so I had a male nurse and a female nurse. Neither one of them spoke English. So I get the attention of the female nurse. She's in there, and I say very loudly and forcefully, "Can I get some milk?" Scares the heck out of me. She runs over by the door. I mean, she's scared. I say, "Oh, that's kind of stupid." Speaking loudly and forcefully to somebody that doesn't understand English does not make them understand English, okay? So I relax my body, regroup, started talking to her very calmly, saying, you know, what am I saying? She don't understand, but I'm saying, I'm sorry, with my hands open. You know, it popped in my head, okay, let's try some type of sign language. So I thought about it. Had a great uncle who was a dairy farmer in Wisconsin and had to milk cows. There we go. Moo, moo. Her eyes get this big, she turns around, runs out of the cell, slams the door, and I'm like, oh crap. So I don't know what's going on. So as a prisoner, and any POW can tell you this because you pay attention to every little detail. After a while, you recognize footsteps. I just got there. I didn't know footsteps yet. And I said to myself, well, if she comes back, obviously she figured it out. My other nurse was a male nurse. If he comes back, he's going to beat the crap out of me. Somebody comes down the hallway. They stop in front of my cell. Our cells were solid metal doors, but they had a little window door. But it wasn't just bars. It was actually a door that they had to open up to look into the cell. For some reason, the individual decided they were going to look in the cell first. I mean, I can't sit up, let alone stand up. I'm in the freaking bed. It's not like I'm going to be hiding beside the door to jump the guy. You know? But anyway, the little door opens. It's the dude. Oh, crap. I'm freaking out. Figuring out where I'm going to put my arms and stuff to protect myself. He unlocks the door, walks in, hands me a bottle of milk. That's the milk story. Okay. So we got the milk story in, we got the tomato story, and you know, it's how we're good to go. Let's fast forward a few days. A little bit extra racket going on out of the norm, so we know something up. They transported us from the prison infirmary to a nice place called Autumn Green. Ever heard of that? A prison in Baghdad. And I'm like, this sucks. Because I'm thinking, infirmary, prison, which one would you rather be in? You know? So I'm in there, and of course they're always locking the door on me, even though I can't stand up, let alone, you know, or nothing. And so they did several things that morning. They came in, changed my clothes, took off my soft cotton hospital gown that was actually comfortable, a little bit of comfort. Comfort's important, you don't want to lose it. And they put this ugly, uncomfortable prisoner war uniform on me that felt like it was made out of a doggone burlap sack. Yeah, didn't like it. Of course, the guy leaves, locks the door. Another guy comes in, they bring me food, more than usual, better quality, everything. Leaves, locks the door. Third guy comes in, stainless steel bowl, half full of cold water, cup, shaving brush, straight edge razor. Throws that cold water on me, lathers me up, shaves me. Leaves the door open, ambulance gurney comes in, transfer to the gurney, take me out, put me in an ambulance. Guess who's in the ambulance with me in the back? The same guard that was on the bus. But he ain't wearing his uniform, he's wearing a two-piece suit. Pistol in a shoulder holster and a folding stock AK. So I thought, what's going on here? This guy's in the military because I recognize him, but he's not wearing his uniform. And it clicks. Clean me up, feed me better, make me look pretty. Got a guard that's partially disguised. I'm in a real ambulance. Propaganda time, right? Want me to say something bad, not our people. So I don't know tap code. I don't know Morse code. I have a rudimentary knowledge of sign language. This. So you know which one I'm going to use if they're making me say something I don't want to, okay? But eventually we do stop, we back up. Right before the doors open, I hear people speaking in English, some with an Arabic accent, some with a European English type accent. At that time, the doors open up, 6 foot tall Caucasian guy walks up, says he's with the International Committee of Red Cross and shows me his ID. You know what my response was? I was in shock. I was all ready for, propaganda and stuff. I will tell you the truth, for the first 10 to 20 minutes after I was turned over to these guys, I thought they were just that they were Iraqi spies. I didn't believe it. Just because of the way we had been, mistreated, the waffling back and forth on the good cop, bad cop, so to speak, scenario. I finally figured, it finally sunk in because more and more POWs were being released and brought into the same location. Okay, let's fast forward. Back in the States, at Walter Reed. Been through surgery for 12 hours in surgery. They told me I may never walk again. As you can see, I'm standing upright, so that's a good thing. And some medical personnel, come into my hospital room there, and they tell me, do you know it's a miracle you're alive? And I look at them and say, yeah, duh. It's like, oh, we're sorry, we're not talking about surviving being shot down. I say, what do you mean? Well, when we did surgery here at Walter Reed, we found bone fragments within 1 to 2 millimeters of your main femoral artery. I have been placed in the back of troop carriers, in the back of cars, on top of ABCs, in the back of Jeep-type vehicles. I mean, jostled around, beat up on, and it's just a miracle those fragments didn't move in several hours. I wouldn't be here today. It's flat out miracle. And I'm going to end with one other thing here. About roughly 10 years later or so, after 9/11, we went into Afghanistan and then back into Iraq, and we live down by Fort Rutherford in southeast Alabama. We had a lot of support and troop type things in the towns around that area. I spoke at some events or otherwise attended. Well, Billy Butts, who was my assistant crew chief gunner that you saw there, if I can get this clicker to work. He's actually somebody shorter than me. But Billy, good guy and stuff, but he was skilled. And so I'm out at this event, and his sister comes up to me, and she has something for me. She says, you need to take this and read it. So I take it from her, and I take it home, and what it is Billy's autopsy report. Kind of a strange thing, but Billy's sister, their family, they all wanted me to read it because they thought it was important that I read this. So I'm going to paraphrase what it said. Blunt force trauma to the chest, which stopped the heart from beating. When I read that, I knew exactly what killed Billy. His M60 machine gun that he was firing at the enemy on impact with the ground came in the window and hit him right in the chest, and that's what killed him. Now I know why I was told, stolen your weapon. Just a couple pictures to show you. That's when oh, interesting fact, just to let you know. You see that sailor and that other recruit there next to him, the Army recruit? Those are my brothers. Yeah, interesting. Most people don't know that. My wife always says she likes that picture. She says, I like that picture. And of course, that's on our honeymoon. We didn't meet until several years after all those experiences. So she got to deal with all my PSTD issues. So, good wife there, right there. That's a keeper. 28, almost 29 years now. And I had to throw in a picture of something I get to do as a wounded veteran. Nice antelope, right? Yeah. I thank you all. I like to tell, I see many of you here in uniform. You know what? You guys are my heroes. You're saying, what? Why is he saying that? I say that because you are holding the torch and you are going forward and you're the ones protecting us now. And I just want to say God bless you all, and God bless the United States of America. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. That was a great story, and now we're going to have Mike Brazelton. Mike, tell us your story.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. If you excuse me, I'm going to speak to my slides. I'd like to start right away because I only have 25 minutes to go through 73 slides. Okay, my adventure started on the 7th of August, 1966. I was on my 111th mission. I was pulling off a flat suppression run. Excuse me. When I got a direct hit by what I think is 57 millimeter AAA, the airplane felt like it was hit by a cement truck. Overheat light for the engine came on. Followed a few minutes later by a fire light. The controls came out. I was in a slight climb and my airspeed slowed down to well below landing speed, and the airplane just started to fall out of the air. There aren't many people that have pictures of themselves getting shot down. But in this case, I do. The airplane hit about 30 seconds after I ejected. As soon as my parachute opened, I went straight down. The airplane rolled over on its back and hit in some light foothills. I hit quite a ways away from where I saw some people on the ground that were actually shooting at me while I was in the chute. I ran for about 20 minutes, hid for about 20 minutes before they found me. It was a bad day for the Air Force. 7 F-105s were shot down. I was number 7. No one saw me get out. 1 or 2 airplanes thought they heard a beeper, but from that point on I was listed as missing in action. And I was missing in action for 4 years. Evening I was shot down, I was paraded around to several groups of Vietnamese. Newspaper people were taking pictures and movies of me. And this picture showed up almost 50 years to the day after I was shot down. It showed up on the internet. During the first few hours after I was captured, I had several interrogations. I could tell that they were in sort of a hurry, so it was relatively easy just to stick the name, rank, serial number, and date of birth. Although they didn't like that too much, and they roughed me up quite a bit. What they really had in mind was my own personal parade down the streets of Taiwan. This lasted for about 2 hours. It was pretty brutal. Standing up in the truck, and of course, people or populations are never really happy with people that bomb them. So while I was going through this, they were throwing rocks and bottles and other things. Trouble is, sometimes they'd hit me and sometimes they'd hit my guards in the truck. So we'd go on half a mile or so, slow up, and we'd start again. Later that night, about 2 in the morning, I was put in a Jeep. I was taken from Taiwan down to Hanoi. Got to Hanoi about sunup and pulled up to these gates here, and I knew exactly where I was. This is the entrance to the Hanoi Hill, Ho Prison. I was only here for about a day. In the evening, I was put in a truck with other prisoners who were blindfolded and transported out to a zoo on the outskirts of Hanoi, out to a prison on the outskirts of Hanoi called the zoo. The zoo was an old French film studio converted into a prison. There was another prison built next to it that we called the Annex. I was put in, if you could read it, I was put in the office. That's where I changed uniforms. They took my flight suit. They gave me my prison clothes, basically a t-shirt, shorts, or long pants and a long shirt, and some accoutrements like a toothbrush and soap. And if you get shot down in the war really early, you can get a single room. My first cell was about 2 meters wide and 3 meters long. There's no windows, a few air vents at the top with a bare light bulb on 24 hours a day. More than a year before I was shot down, me sent a letter to the Red Cross saying, you know, this really isn't a war, so any prisoners we take really aren't prisoners of war, they're war criminals. And they use that as an excuse to keep the Red Cross away from us and to do some things to us that wouldn't normally be approved by the Geneva Convention. All of us live by the code of conduct. We all knew it. I could probably repeat it today. Probably most of my friends could too. But the real hang-up was Article 5. When questioned, should I become a prisoner of war, I'm required to give only name, rank, service number, and date of birth, or evade answering further questions to the utmost of my ability. Here we go. I will make no oral or written statements to the whole of my country and its allies are harmful to their cause. Well, the Vietnamese were out to exploit us. They wanted us to write confessions. They wanted us to write letters to anti-war groups. They wanted us to write letters to anti-war lawmakers, congressmen, and senators. They wanted us to interview communist newspapers and delegations from Eastern Europe. All the things we didn't want to do. Well, they had their way of convincing us that maybe we should cooperate with them. This is called the ropes. As far as I know, every POW went through the ropes. And most of them were broken. They went to the limit until they were cooperating even just limitedly with the enemy. Other long-term punishment, they had a variety of things they could do to you. This is one of the toughest ones that would put you in stocks and handcuff you or manacle your hands behind you and leave you that way for a week or more, depending on how severely they want to punish you. It's really hard to pee and poop in that position, so it gets pretty messy. Plus, if it's a summertime, mosquitoes literally eat you alive. Other than the exciting times we had at Stark Terror, we spent thousands of hours just alone in a cell with nothing to do. We were bored. We had nothing to read. Most of us sort of fell back on mental games of one sort or another, which is sort of a form of going stir crazy. These were the general reasons that POWs were tortured. Military information. They thought I knew a lot more than I actually did. And actually, I had only one military interrogation. Most of the reason we were tortured, I would say 90%, was they wanted propaganda, and we didn't want to give it to them. Beyond that, breaking the camp rules, particularly communicating, they did whatever they could to keep us separated. And communicating with another room was strictly forbidden. Sometimes after an air raid, the guards would run through the camp in the evening after the officers went home. They'd open the cells and they'd beat the prisoners pretty badly. Sometimes we'd get tortured just for contemptuous attitude. If you rolled your eyes at them or made a snide remark, they'd report you the camp commander, and of course he had to back up his guards, so likely you'd end up in stocks again. attempting to escape, brutal retribution. And sometimes they were just curious about the POW organization we had, so they take us out and individually work us over until they had the information that they thought they wanted. The biggest lesson I learned as a prisoner was to really resist. Once you get tortured, you stay tortured. All we had to do was show me the ropes after I was first tortured, and I had to comply with the things that they wanted. We had to overcome our fear of the ropes and do what we could. So we looked at it. You can't let the fear of the ropes keep you from doing your job. Don't give them anything for free. And hold out as long as we can. Guidance from the top said, don't allow yourself to be tortured to the point of permanent physical or mental inability. And do not let yourself be tortured to the point where you lose control. We did what we could to stay healthy. In a room, we could do a certain amount of exercises, push-ups, sit-ups, running in place. The Vietnamese did not like to see us exercising because they thought we were practicing to escape. The pearl of our existence while we were there was communications. Early on, before I was shot down, the prisoners developed a tap code, a 5x5 matrix of the alphabet without the letter K. The first set of taps would be identify the row. The second set of taps would identify the column. For instance, the letter U was tap, 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 tap. Tap, 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 tap. This is typically the way we communicate. When I was solo for the first 5 months, it was pretty dangerous because you had your ear up against the wall and you're concentrating, and a guard could come by any time and open his little guard door and see you. And you end up in stocks again. If you had a roommate, it was much easier because one of you could clear and the other could communicate. Later, we learned actually to talk through the wall. I put in a little metal cup up to the wall, surrounding it with a little dish rag we had, and force breathing, talking into a wall. We could talk and understand through a brick wall that was 2 feet thick. We also learned how to write notes, which was particularly useful for communication between buildings. Me and my roommate developed a hand code when we had one particular situation in which we could see another room, but we were unable to tap to them. Actually, to see the wall, to see the other prisoners, I had to stand on my roommate's shoulders and look out the little vent. It was about 8 feet, 9 feet off the floor. He was 220 pounds, so he had to support me. This is Jeremiah Denton. He was forced to meet a delegation from Eastern Europe. He told them he didn't want to do it. He told them he wouldn't do it, so they took him outside and beat him up until he complied. And he was giving benign answers to the journalists, communist journalists. At the same time, he was blinking his eyes using Morse code, which only the Navy knew. He blinked out the word torture. It was the first concrete proof that the IA had that prisoners were being tortured. This is Dick Stratton. They did about the same thing to him. When he came out to be introduced to the reporters, he started bowing. And he bowed obsequiously to any reporter that addressed him. Anybody that talked to him, he would turn and bow. Of course, it seemed like he was an automaton, and they wondered whether or not he'd been brainwashed. The great escape occurred in May of '69. It had been planned for a while and put off and planned. 2 prisoners were identified for the escape, John Dramisi and Ed Atterbury. They had plans. They had a few things that they gathered from the camp to make them look more like Vietnamese, like their conical hats and chogi poles, and some iodine to rub on their face to make their complexion darker. It was on, it was off, and then on one rainy Saturday night, they got permission from the SRO and the zoo to go. Conrad Trump was the SRO. And they got out of the rooms, which was relatively easy to do, and they got over the wall. And they got quite a ways from the prison, about 3 kilometers when they decided to hide. Unfortunately, the Vietnamese put a 5-kilometer circle around the prison, and they were found later that day. They were taken back to the zoo, where they were tortured mercilessly, and unfortunately, Ed Atterbury was killed. The Vietnamese were very embarrassed by this escape, and about a week later, they took the senior ranking man out of every room in the zoo, in the annex, took him over to the zoo, and tortured him over a period of 3 weeks. They wanted to know everything, their organization, communication links, our chain of command, how we, just everything. And they damn near got just about everything. Unfortunately, although I was just a first lieutenant, I was senior ranking man in room number 1. So I got to go to the zoo with the others. After they were finished with us, they put us all in room 10 of the zoo, all wearing stocks, 24 hours a day, half rations, bathing just occasionally, and just generally bad treatment that went on for several months. These are some of the problems we had. Diarrhea, dysentery were common. Ringworm. He got ringworm. Got it all over 100% of his body. He was suffering terribly, and finally the Vietnamese got some iodine for him. We're talking about 100% strength iodine. And I got to douse him with this stuff, and he peeled like a snake, but it cured his ringworm. Tooth cavities. I had 2 teeth pulled while I was in Vietnam, and there were many other prisoners that also had their teeth pulled without Novocaine. Very dirty boils. I got a lot of boils and carbuncles at one time. I had more than 70 of them on my body. Open, closed, big, little, coming and going. It was probably the most miserable time I had in prison. Heat rash. Everybody got heat rash in the summertime. It's just hot and humid in the cells, and there's no air, no airflow. And you just break out with the rash, and you keep it all summer until it cools off again. Ticks were common. Of course, vitamin deficiency. Mosquitoes would eat you alive in the summer. We did have mosquito nets, nonetheless. Some mental problems, extreme boredom, loneliness, pink eye. Pink eye was sort of funny because in rooms with about 40 people in them, one guy gets pink eye, everybody gets pink eye. So we're all wandering around with scarves or handkerchiefs over our eyes, bumping into each other, trying to live together. Anxiety, cold. It actually gets very cold in North Vietnam in the wintertime, especially inside brick cells. You needed about 2 blankets to keep warm. I got infected ears, well, many of us did. And of course, some prisoners suffered the whole time with untreated or poorly treated injuries. Personality-wise, this is Zev Alvarez, a pilot shot down after the Gulf of Tonkin incident. One combat mission, and he's a prisoner for 9 years. This is my roommate, my first roommate, Tom McNish. We were put together after we'd been in solitary confinement for 5 months. We talked about what we wanted to do after we got out, what we wanted to fly, where we wanted to go. So after he got out, he said, I'm going to be a doctor. And the Air Force sent him to pre-med, med school. He became a doctor, flight surgeon, hospital commander. Then someone said, hey, you're a rated pilot. We're going to send you to A-10 training. So we sent him back to A-10 school where he was top gunner in his class. He was only one of 12 flight surgeons that were rated pilots in the Air Force. 50 years later, we've been friends and close friends for all that time, we asked him if he would marry me and my second wife in about 2017. We brought him to Washington. We got him authority to marry us, and he married us at my wife's art club. This is one of our more illustrious guests, John McCain. People would always come up to me and say, "You were in prison with John McCain?" And I say, no, I was shot down a year before John. He was in prison with me. Pete Peterson, after his career with the Navy, he became a congressman. I think he served 2 terms. After he retired from being a congressman, he was picked to be the first ambassador back to Vietnam. Check Boeing, the 105 pilot, shot down in '65. He went back home, and unfortunately his eyes were such that he couldn't fly, but it didn't prevent him from becoming a 4-star general. Sam Johnson, also another well-known pilot, he was a sky blazer in Europe, and after his career in the Air Force, he became a congressman from Texas. Quick word about food. We were fed twice a day, usually a big bowl of rice and a bowl of sort of coherent soup with the greens in it. We called it rice and sewer green soup. Occasionally, they might change that for a small loaf of French bread and a pumpkin soup. So we get French bread and pumpkin soup twice a day for maybe 8 or 9 months. Then we go back to sewer green soup and rice. For one period of time, 67, 68, some Cubans were helping out the Vietnamese. They were put in charge of about 20 prisoners. I think they were going to show the Vietnamese how to handle prisoners, and it turned out they couldn't handle us any better than the Vietnamese could, and they became very brutal. And reportedly, one of those prisoners in their charge was killed. Surprisingly, in 1968, there was a release of four prisoners. We saw some newsreels and read some articles about the release, and apparently they went home in a suit and tie. And they, at a press conference prior to their release, they said some nice things about the Vietnamese. They thanked them for their kind and humane treatment and such. And of course, you can imagine how upset we were. First of all, they weren't early shoot-downs, so they weren't going home in shoot-down order. And then the things that they said were things that we tried to, that we went through a lot of pain to avoid saying. So the word came down, nobody goes home early. And if we go home in shoot-down order, well, unfortunately, a few months later, 3 more prisoners were released. And they did the same thing. One of them, Jim Lowe, was a Korean ace, shot down 7 airplanes in Korea. He was like the worst of them. It's like he almost cooperated with them from the day he was shot down, trying to get an early release. And as well as going home in suit and tie, he left a tape recording to be played to the rest of the prisoners, telling us to be good boys, follow the camp rules, help win the war for the Vietnamese. We, of course, wanted these people court-martialed after we got out, but the POW issue was so popular that they just allowed them to quietly retire. On the 5th of August, Doug Hegdel was one of the prisoners who was released. He was a Navy corpsman. He was just blown overboard when his destroyer was shelling the coast. He was picked up by a fisherman who thought he was a spy. The hell out of him. But as he got into the prison system, they realized he's just a country boy. He just had a southern accent, just easygoing. We never thought he should have been there. The Vietnamese even gave him special jobs to do around the camp, like sort of sweep up and stuff. And as he slept, he'd use tab code to find out who different prisoners were in different rooms, or pass on information that he knew. When we realized he was being groomed to go home, his roommates made him memorize 250 names, and he had them all in a home. And he was released, and he did go home, and he went from base to base, repeating everything he knew about our treatment, and of course the names. And in San Diego, my parents were able to talk with him, and sure enough, one of the names that he memorized was mine. He mispronounced it, but that's all. On 72, Mark Gartner was a close friend of mine. He went home. He went home because his mother was an anti-war activist and came over to Vietnam in a peace delegation. So he went home with his mom. And he always thought he probably regretted it because it was just a few months before we were released. In 1970, the Air Force and Army staged a raid on the Sante prison, about 10 kilometers outside of Hanoi. They landed with 2 helicopters, shot up the place. Unfortunately, there were no Americans there at this time. They'd been evacuated or moved more than a year before. Nonetheless, the very fact that the Americans could stage a raid like this made the Vietnamese very nervous. And so they moved us, all the prisoners from all the outlying camps, to Camp Unity, which was a large courtyard in the back of the Hanoi Hill. It's the first time all the prisoners were together in the same place at the same time. It allowed us to get organized, work out the chain of command, work out the rules of engagement, common rules of engagement for dealing with the Vietnamese. We were also in contact with Reisner and Stockdale, both of whom had been kept in solitary confinement all this time. That's where we organized the 4th Allied POW Wing, figuring in World War I, World War II, and Korea, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd POW wings. Up to this time, we're talking about late 69, early 70, families had been told to sort of keep quiet about their missing relative, about the POW or their MIA. This is a typical telegram that was received by Bill Robinson, reporting his shot to shoot down and his loss. And the very last line says, "Suggest you not divulge this information." Well, that was fine for the first 6 years of the war. But all this time, the families of MIAs and missing in action were getting together. And they were getting upset with the government for suppressing this information on their loved ones. So they decided to go public. And they started writing articles, giving interviews, talking to politicians, and they became a potent political force in the country. And they formed the National League of Vietnam POW MIA families. After doing this, the POW issue became very popular in the United States and even internationally. And it turned out the Vietnamese were very sensitive to international opinion. And now, late 69, early 70, torture for the most part stopped. We were let out in bigger groups. We got better food, better treatment, better medical treatment. We also got to write letters home and receive letters. And not much you could say in a letter even except, Mom, I'm fine, I'll be home when the war is over. This is John Borley, F4 Aircraft Commander, captain when he was shot down, eventually became a Major General. The gentleman next to him is Pop Kearns. Pop Kearns was a B-17 co-pilot in World War II and was shot down and captured by the Germans. Spent a year in the Stalag. Then 21 years later, he's shot down again. This time he's an F4 commander. He was one of the first pilots in the war shot down by a surface-to-air missile. It cost him 7.5 years. The late late 72, peace negotiations had literally been going on for years. They were between the United States and North Vietnam, South Vietnam, and the Viet Cong. Well, the South Vietnamese did something that irritated the North Vietnamese, and they pulled out of the negotiations. And President Nixon, in order to force the North Vietnamese back to the negotiating table, started unrestricted bombing campaign of Vietnam, using B-52s at last. And for, I forget how many days, it looks like about 11 days, nights actually, B-52s rolled into North Vietnam, did some heavy damage, but they took casualties. According to U.S. statistics, we lost 16 B-52s, which must have really upset Strategic Air Command. And they lost 43 air crew killed and 49 became POWs. POWs were dropping out of the sky so fast, they didn't know what to do with them. So they put them in cells next to us. Here I am, I had been a prisoner for 6.5 years, next to a guy who the day before was a combat crewman somewhere in Okinawa. Of course, from the Vietnamese point of view, first of all, they claimed 73, they claimed 23 B-52 shot down. From their point of view, the B-52s came, they shot down 23 of them, the B-52s stopped coming, therefore we won. And it was a big celebration to them when the B-52s were defeated in their mind. But nonetheless, it forced the North Vietnamese back to the negotiating table, where we gave them everything that they wanted. And they signed peace accords on the 27th of January, 1973. The North Vietnamese released, for the first time, the consolidated list of all their prisoners. Unfortunately, among our midst, there were a couple of turncoats. Eugene Wilbur, Edison Miller. Wilbur was a Navy F-4 Squadron commander, and Miller was a Marine F-4 Squadron commander. And for various reasons, they decided to cooperate with the enemy, working actively against the POW network. They provided propaganda for the North Vietnamese. They met with anti-war activists. They indoctrinated new prisoners in anti-war activities and accepted special favors from the enemy. And when we were released, they were sent home with the very first group, even though that was out of order as far as shoot-down goes. Again, we wanted them to court-martial too, but again, the POW issue was so popular at the time that it was sort of swept under the rug and they were allowed to retire. In the whole war, there were 735 POWs in Vietnam. 73 of them died in captivity. In North Vietnam, there were about 591 prisoners released overall by North Vietnam, and 29 of us died in captivity. Died for various reasons. Injuries sustained during ejection, injuries received while being captured, torture, mistreatment, unrelated diseases, severe mental problems, execution, unhealthy living conditions, and there's just some unknown cases. We were released in 4 groups between February and March 1973. In shoot-down order, I was in the second group. We were given clothes to go home in, trousers, shirt, jacket, shoes. We rushed to Geelong Airport, where we lined up, and our names were called one by one. We marched forward, salute the Air Force General. Immediately, a crewman from a 141 took us by the arm and marched us toward an airplane, as if we were going to go somewhere else. As soon as the airplane was full, it started taxiing, even before its cargo doors were closed. Lined up on the runway, We were actually very calm at this point. And as the airplane roared off, got airborne, we were calm until we heard the landing gear fold up. And when it goes clunk, clunk, we went crazy. And this picture was taken just as the landing gear was raised. And about 10 seconds later, everybody was out of their seat. We crawled all over that airplane. Our destination was Clark Air Force Base. Oops, forgot that. The services, it turned out, had us prepared for our release. And we were at the beginning of going through what we called Operation Homecoming, of which Randolph was a major part. We flew to Clark Air Base, where we were greeted by the ambassador to the Philippines, the commander from Pacific Command, and that Air Force general there is General O'Keefe. He was in charge of the Pacific Air Forces. His son was my wingman the day I was shot down and had recorded my shoot down. So not only did I have a picture of getting shot down, I had a tape recording. From Philippines, we were flown to Hickam, then we were flown to Travis Air Force Base, where I got on a medevac airplane and was transported to March Air Force Base near my home, where I met my family for the first time. So my two sisters, my mother, my dad, and I had a new stepmom, as it turned out. They were happy to see. Among us, for our heroes that earned the Congressional Medal of Honor, Lance Syjon died of his injuries in prison. Jim Stockdale and Bud Day are very our heroes. They deserve at least the Congressional Medal of Honor. Leo Thorson's actually earned his Medal of Honor before he was shot down during an engagement with MiGs in June '67. Out of all the POWs, 22 of them, about 4%, made general or admiral. Sometimes I like to wonder, what did we get out of the war? From my point of view, I think we got airplanes at last that were second to none. No longer were third generation airplanes shooting down fifth generation airplanes. We got our F-14, F-15s, F-16s, and now the F-22 and F-35. That simulated real war training in terms of the red flag aggressors and Top Gun and other programs. We got AWACS, which allowed us to control the skies. Precision guided munitions. No longer did we send 4 105s, each loaded with 8 750-pound bombs against pinpoint targets. We got standoff capability. No longer did we have to drive into the target in heavily defended areas to deliver ordnance. We got a day-night capability, unity of command, and all volunteer force. Again, this is my opinion, what helped us to survive. Many people had faith in God, not everybody. We were all confident the United States would bring us home eventually. Just sorry it lasted longer than World War I, World War II, and Korea combined. Firm understanding of code of conduct greatly aided us in avoiding exploitation. I had complete trust in all my friends. Good education helped a lot. Firm determination to resist exploitation. Communication. Mental adjustment to the reality of the situation. Attempt to stay in good health. And almost as importantly as any others, a good sense of humor. We had several jokes POWs came up with, we call it black humor. Every silver lining has a black cloud. It's always darkest just before it's totally black. The pessimists thought we were all going to die up there and they wouldn't even send the bodies up. The optimists thought they would. 6 weeks or 2 months after we got home, President Nixon had a big reception for us. There were so many of us, 600 POWs and their wives and girlfriends, a lot of Hollywood personalities and political types. There were so many that they couldn't fit us all into the White House, so they put up a circus tent on the lawn. I suppose any prisoners in the future are going to have a ballroom to celebrate. I was anxious to fly again, so just 2.5 months after I got out, I reported back to Randolph, 560th. Go through training. I was the number 3 to report here, so my call sign is Freedom 03. I think I'm the senior Freedom Flyer now. From there, I went on to my next assignment, the aggressors. Fortunately, the aggressors at the time were flying T-38, so 560 didn't know it, but they were training me to be an aggressor. This is a picture of the first 4 POWs to form a flight of 4. Sort of a classic picture with the Taj Mahal in the background. So here I am now, 53 years later, back at Randolph. Happy to be here. Thank you very much.
You did a great job today. You're getting better as you get older. Oh, wow. We have a couple, 10 minutes for a couple of questions. That was the greatest presentation of our POW experience because it really covered everything. Okay, we're open to questions. Come on up here, Mike and Dan.
Okay, fire away.
I'll yell it at you so that they can hear us. Actually, I'll just use the mic. Thank you both for spending time with us today. Something that we look forward to every year. Obviously, very different experiences at very different times. I'm wondering if either of you can comment on any of the things that you think, as you listen to the other's story, if there's things that are enduring that apply to both your situations, although they were different.
Well, comparing myself to some of my compatriots who were badly wounded or who suffered illness while in prison, I was always happy that I was in reasonably good health, even though I wasn't in great health. But being in good health and trying to stay in good health are very important parts of getting through the experience.
Now, I used to say that I was only held 8 days. A World War II veteran who'd been held for about a year as a POW corrected me on that. He told me, never say that again. All your freedoms were taken from you for a period of time, whether that be an hour, a day, a month, a year, or years. Most Americans will never, ever know what that's like. I'll just leave it right there.
Yes, we answered everybody's question.
Gentlemen, I have a question. What is the most vivid memory that you guys have from the day before the retreat?
Regarding the war or just regarding Actually, when we got to Clark Air Force Base, we were put in the hospital on the top floor. Actually, we were locked in the top floor. They didn't want us running around. But they did allow us to go down to the cafeteria. So I went down to the cafeteria and I, of course, had my choice of just about anything. And I had steak and eggs and ice cream.
I can't beat that one. My first meal, real meal that wasn't hospital food. The Navy treated me pretty good. They fed us steak and all the sides. And one of the crew members came up to me and he said to me, "Is there anything you might want that you don't see here?" And I'm like, "What a spread, you know?" And jokingly, I said, "How about some lobster?" 20 minutes later, they bring up a big aluminum trays. We all know what those look like, full of lobster tails. And I'm like, dang, the Navy eats good. But then he whispers to me, he says, "Hey, Chief, little secret, we got it from locals for just pennies a pound." That's cheap. But that's one. The other one that I'll never forget, though, is when we were put on a commercial airliner flying out Baghdad back to Saudi Arabia, to Riyadh. And once we got up to altitude, we were flying, a British tornado came in to escort us, and then after the tornado came in, an American F-15 came in. Well, the pilot, who I just met a few weeks ago for the first time, he did something that pissed off his commander, but we thoroughly enjoyed it. He did a nice 12-point barrel roll. It was just beautiful. And it's just like the picture you showed up there of everybody on the airplane coming back. We were like that too. Yeah! Yeah! That's one of my favorites.
Thank you. It's about time to end now.
Right, I'm Lieutenant Colonel Josh Stallard. I'm the commander of the 435th. I'm going to close this out. The 560th and now the 435th Fighter Training Squadron have a historic and important relationship with those POWs known as Freedom Flyers. To culminate this event, I would like to take a moment to recognize all in attendance today, all retired. Gentlemen, if you wouldn't mind, please stand if able when I call your name and remain standing. Colonel Retired Michael Brazelton, Freedom Flyer number 3. Colonel Retired Lee Ellis, Freedom number 34. Lieutenant Colonel Retired Tim Ayers, Freedom number 50. Lieutenant Colonel Retired George Rose, Freedom number 60. Sergeant First Class Retired Dan Stamaris, Freedom number 216. Last but not least, Mr. John Fleener and families, the family of Ken Fleener, Freedom number 80, in whom Fleener Auditorium is named. Also, if there are any other prisoners of war or family of prisoners of war present who are not mentioned, please stand to be recognized. All right, y'all can take a seat. Thank you. Please help me in thanking them for their service under these extreme difficult circumstances. This is not over now. We're going to move to the reclaim ceremony. This concludes the 28th Annual POW Symposium. Thank you all for sharing your stories, for attending. Bus transportation for the Freedom Flyers and their guests are available outside the entrance of the Fleener Auditorium. We look forward to seeing you at the reclaim ceremony. It starts at 13:30. Thank you and have a great day.